welcome to the first of 3 videos to help you make the most of learning online. And in this first video, we're going to be focusing on techniques that enable you to minimize stress and maximize focus. So we're going to dig right in. So the first thing that you might want to think about in approaching your online learning is planning and scheduling. So have a look ahead at the course and see how many hours or video sections there are that you need to take in. And then think about how much time per week you have to learn. So for example, our vocal health first aid course is 37 sections long, and they're approximately 20 minutes each, some a bit longer, some a bit shorter. So if you watch 1 video per weekday and 4 at the weekend every week, it will take you 4 weeks to finish the course. Or if you decide to do a set period of 4 hours every weekend, for example, it will take you approximately 3 weeks to complete the course. It's worth bearing in mind whether or not there's an exam or a test at the end that you might want to revise for. So it's a good idea to add a little bit of a buffer time to revise material, to re-watch videos, and to reorganise your notes so that you feel prepared for that, especially if the course has a set amount of time that you need to complete an assessment in. And already by doing that, we've minimised a little bit of stress. We can look ahead and see what it is that we've got to do and how much time we have to get it done. Once you've done that, schedule the time. So write it into your diary. Check me out, showing my age, or put it into the calendar on your phone. There's 2 really good reasons to do that. One is that it's a commitment to yourself. So if you've committed that time, you're probably more likely to follow through on actually doing the work. And that's a good one if you're a little bit of a procrastinator. But it also minimises that nagging feeling. It stops you from carrying around a vague sense that you've got loads of things to do all the time. You can just know what you've got to do, you've committed the time that you've got to do it, and you can feel a little bit more confident and a little bit calmer about approaching the work. So once you've done that, you want to think about how you can set up your home classroom. There's an interesting thing to remember, and this is written about by Daniel Levitin in his book The Organised Mind, is that when we learn things as human beings with human brains, we tend to take in the environment in which we learn it at the same time. So human learning is influenced by context and by the location where learning takes place. And that makes it easier to recall. So if you study in an actual classroom, it's easier for you to recall information because you're calling to mind the location where you learnt it, i.e. the classroom. So this poses a little bit of a dilemma for us as online learners, because the upside of learning online is you can learn anywhere. But also, in terms of how your brain actually works, the downside of learning online is you can learn anywhere, because it's actually more helpful for your brain to have a set location to take information in and make recalling that information at a later date a little bit easier. So how can we create our own classroom to learn in at home? The first thing you might want to do is find a space that's quiet and distraction-free. Wasn't that easier said than done? Especially if you've got a family or you're in a house share situation, it can be quite difficult if you haven't got your own space. I would say definitely use headphones. A, because it makes it less likely that people will interrupt you, and B, it means that you can get rid of some of the extraneous noise and help with focus. The other thing you can do is try to negotiate times with family in advance where you're using a shared space. So that, again, it makes it a little bit easier to know when you're going to do your work and hopefully arrange with other people to be out of the way at that time. Although, of course, it's a little bit easier said than done. The second thing, as we said a minute ago, is to find a space that's designated only for learning, so that your brain knows that you're in classroom mode and you're going to be focusing on the material at hand. Setting up the same workspace is a really good idea. You can even have a separate login on your device. So perhaps you might decide to learn on the same device each time. That will be helpful. And then log in as a kind of guest user, which means you'll have a different wallpaper. You won't be distracted by all the other icons that are usually there, and you can find yourself in learning mode. Now, this is a really lovely bit of research. Apparently, and this is some research done at Gresham College, just having the opportunity to multitask is detrimental to cognitive performance. So where you're trying to concentrate on a task and an unread email, dun dun dun, is sitting in your inbox, it can reduce your effective IQ by 10 points. So we all think we're doing fine ignoring all of these distractions, right? Not ignoring our phone, not picking up our phone, but actually the effort that it takes to resist the distraction is damaging our ability to work. So we're not working at full power. So what can we do to combat this? Well, it seems obvious, but minimize distractions. And this, my friends, is the big one, isn't it? Turn your phone off or onto airplane mode. If you put it onto airplane mode, it means that you can still use the phone's features like the timer, the calculator, the calendar if you need to, but it won't connect you to anybody else, so there'll be fewer distractions. To be honest, the best thing you can do is have that phone in a different room because we're so used to reaching for it when we feel a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit worried or a little bit antsy. It's much, much better if it's just not available to be handled. Close any other tabs on your computer or device. So you don't want to be trying to focus and have the temptation of the tab about the holiday that you're planning open tantalizingly in your eye line, or information about your tax return. Just have the tab open for the course that you're learning and see if you can close everything else. This is a really good one. We've all been there. You sit down, ready to focus, ready to give something your undivided attention. And that is the moment that your brain decides to remind you of a million other things that you're supposed to be doing, like going to the dentist, or making an appointment somewhere else, or driving someone somewhere, or taking the laundry out of the washing machine. It's endless. So a really good thing to do is to have a side notebook. So it's separate from your course notes. It's just a little notebook on the table. And then when all these thoughts and memories and ideas come up, you just write them down in the side notebook, and then confidently, knowing you can deal with them later, you can go back to your learning. You can also do that for kind of creative ideas that might come up. It's a really, really useful tool. And again, we're maximizing focus and we're minimizing that extra cognitive load that we don't need to worry about. And this is another nice one. You might want to arrange a time slot with a virtual study buddy. So perhaps you know somebody else who's embarking on a course of online learning. You might want to make a little date to have a FaceTime call or a Skype call so that you can work side by side in companionship and feel a little bit less alone. It's also really good for creating accountability. So you've made that appointment with that person, you don't want to let them down, you're much more likely to get your learning done. So a really good one for those of us who have a bit of a procrastination habit. And then how can you maximize your focus once you start to work? Well, think about a time period that's useful for you to work in. So take regular breaks. The 20-20-20 rule is a really good one. So every 20 minutes, look away at from your screen for 20 seconds and focus on something that's at least 20 feet away. So looking out of a window is a really good idea. I always think it's good to have a good blink because we tend to get a hyper focus when we're looking at a screen and our eyes can get a little bit dry. So that's a really quick way of refreshing ourselves every 20 minutes. The other thing you can do is use a timer to set focus periods. So everyone has a different amount of time that they can focus on before they start to get a little bit distracted. For some people it's 20 minutes, for some people it's closer to 45. If you just set a little timer, pop it by your table, get on with your work, and then when the timer rings, you know it's a good time to take a break. Obviously, if you're learning with us, our videos are 20 minutes long, so it's quite handy. Just watch one video and then take a break. And don't forget your body. So when we start to focus, we can get really, really crunched in, frowning forward desperately. Our body gets smaller and smaller. So whenever you take a break, give your body a little treat. Have a yawn, have a stretch, stand up, move, and don't forget to stay hydrated. It's really, really helpful for focus. So with these in mind, what do we then do if we actually start to feel a little bit underconfident or worried in our learning? So you might have had this experience when you're sitting, you're working, and suddenly a bit of a negative thought pops into your mind, like, oh, why is my attention span so bad? And on a good day, we'd all be able to talk ourselves out of that with a little bit of self-talk, just say, come on, let's focus, there's not much more to go, whatever, and it would be fine. On a less good day, we might find ourselves getting sucked into a bit of a spiral of doom. So we think about a slightly more negative thing. For example, I can't take in any information and there's so much of the course to go. So already we've gone from a very small problem to a slightly bigger problem. And then that could even give rise to an even more worrying thought. I'll never be able to do this. So we've gone from a small problem to a huge, seemingly insurmountable problem in a very, very short space of time. So what can we do to stop ourselves from going down this road of negative thinking? Well, this is where mindfulness can be a really, really useful approach. So mindfulness is a way of looking at and understanding our thoughts. And it tells us that if we become aware of our thoughts, it can help us choose how we react to them, so that we can make a conscious choice to lean into the worry or to lean away from the worry. The best question to ask ourselves when we find ourselves in the spiral of doom is, am I hungry? Am I tired? Because actually, being hungry or tired can make a very small problem immediately seem 100 times worse. So have a break, have something to eat. And also ask yourself, can you just stop for the day and maybe pick it up again tomorrow? Mostly that's possible and it's a really good idea, rather than sitting and worrying and feeling worse and worse. The other thing that mindfulness teaches us is that we can actually choose to turn our attention away from our thoughts and place our attention elsewhere. So instead of having an argument with our own thoughts, which we often do, we can just make a slightly different choice. And there's 3 relatively simple ways that we can do that when we're trying to learn. The first is to make a change in your body. So you're feeling bad, thoughts are whirring around your head about how terrible everything is. Stretch, shake, dance around to your favourite Lizzo song, have a shower, take a walk. So making a change in your body will always give you a little bit of an easy pathway to changing how you think and feel. Yes, that's the first way. The second way is to turn your attention away from your thoughts and bring it back to your physical body by focusing on your breath. And those of you who have done any mindfulness meditation will know a little bit about that. The simplest way is just to place your hand on your lower abdomen and notice the breath coming in and out. So our breath's pretty reliable. It comes in, it goes out. That's what it does. And just notice the feelings in your body as the breath comes in and out. And you can just count the breath, so maybe count 10 breaths. And a lot of people find that that makes them feel immediately a little bit calmer and a little bit more able to either go back to learning or to put their learning aside for the day and come back refreshed another day. The third one, and this is my favourite, is to turn your attention away from your thoughts by bringing your attention into your immediate environment. So starting to look around the room and find things that are blue. You might see some blue books behind me. So immediately you're focusing on looking for something specific, and it takes your attention away from the worries that have been going on. So it's a quick way to bring yourself back into the room that you're in and feel a little bit more physically present. If you are learning on the Vocal Health First Aid course with us, there are a couple of great videos about mindfulness, and there are also some links on our learning resource page to get a better explanation and understanding of how it works. However, if you do feel that worry is becoming a bit more of a constant companion in your learning and you want to be directed towards some resources that can help, you'll also find those on our Learning Resources page. So, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in a little while for our next video.